A ballistic missile directly struck the building of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs on Thursday morning, killing Foreign Minister Eli Bar-Lev on the spot. The attack occurred around morning local time and led to the complete destruction of the main part of the ministry building. The powerful explosion triggered the national alarm system within minutes, paralyzing the operations of most civilian government structures. It is presumed that the missile was launched from the territory of the Islamic Republic of Iran as part of a series of retaliatory strikes that have intensified in recent days. Medical teams, military personnel, and firefighters were dispatched to the scene in less than 15 minutes. However, the evacuation of victims was hampered by the total collapse of much of the building. Eli Bar-Lev was declared dead after his body was found in a horrific state, buried under concrete debris and fragments of a table. Several ministry employees who were attending a morning meeting are also listed as missing or severely injured. As of now, the death toll has reached at least 19 people. The missile didn't wait for the welcome speech. It hit the main table directly, said one of the surviving witnesses who managed to escape from the rubble, taking with him the mobile phone of a foreign diplomat. The Israeli government declared a state of emergency in the country, completely closing access to Jerusalem and ordering all foreign diplomats to leave the area of central government institutions. In the history of the Middle East conflict, a missile has never literally interrupted a foreign minister's speech. This was not an ordinary attack. It was the final presentation, a survivor stated. As of the time of this publication, there has been no official statement from Israel's prime minister. However, military sources indicated that a full-scale response is being prepared, including the mobilization of reservists and airstrikes on strategic targets in Iran. Following the missile strike that killed Israel's foreign minister, the Iranian government has not issued an official statement, but pro-government media in Tehran began spreading information that Israeli military targets were subjected to legitimate punishment. Meanwhile, Israeli military forces started tracking the missile's trajectory using cross-border radar systems and satellites. Initial data suggests that the missiles were equipped with advanced navigation technology and clearly did not hit the ministry building by accident. Defense officials called this attack a high-precision strategic decapitation strike. If this is considered an accident, then a meteorite fall could also be called weather diplomacy, an Israeli defense analyst remarked sarcastically. Intelligence services, including Mossad, immediately activated cyber war and reconnaissance protocols. The airspace in the north, including Tel Aviv and Haifa, is now under strict control. However, the biggest question analysts are asking is how a missile of this size could penetrate the Iron Dome and David's Sling defense systems without being intercepted. We didn't expect a missile to target diplomats directly. We thought missiles usually choose military targets, not desks, said a defense technician who wished to remain anonymous due to profound embarrassment. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange fell 8% in just 2 hours after the news of the foreign minister's death spread. International investors began withdrawing their funds from domestic projects, and some ambassadors from Western countries started assessing the level of diplomatic security in Israel. Within the country, critical voices began questioning the reliability of the defense system, which until now was considered the strongest in the world. Now only the rubble of the building that buried 19 people is strong, a critic commented. This attack has raised fears of a broader escalation, especially if Israel decides to respond openly. It is reported that the Israeli Navy left the port of Haifa this evening and headed east. Amid national panic and international pressure, the political situation in Israel began to waver. An emergency meeting of the Knesset continued into the early morning, with opposition factions demanding open explanations regarding the failure of the defense system and the intelligence's inability to predict the attack. How could an enemy missile travel thousands of kilometers, enter Jerusalem's skies, strike the ministry's roof, and no alarm went off until everything was destroyed, said a deputy from an opposition bloc. The prime minister is under intense pressure to take immediate military action. However, some senior military officials warn that impulsive actions could open a multilateral conflict front, especially if Iran involves its regional allies. Outside the parliament building, thousands of citizens held a spontaneous demonstration, many carrying signs with messages like, "Who's next, the education minister?" And if missiles can fly, why do we pay taxes for security? Panic has also gripped foreign diplomats. According to reports, some embassies evacuated their staff from the city, and the number of diplomatic flights from Ben Gurion Airport surged sharply. Some countries even began considering relocating their embassies back to Tel Aviv, as Jerusalem is no longer deemed strategically safe. Ironically, the underground bunker in the ministry complex, meant to be used in a crisis, is under repair due to budget cuts last year. Now, employees can only regret that the building is more suited for exhibitions than for protection against missiles. The military finally acknowledged that the Iranian missiles likely used low-signature technology and an unconventional trajectory that is difficult to detect with standard defense systems. Meanwhile, the deputy defense minister, in a brief speech, stated, "We will respond, but this time we want to ensure the response targets Iran, not empty warehouses or soccer fields." After 48 hours of negotiations and discussions at the highest military level, Israel finally conducted a limited strike on several targets, claimed to be Iran's missile force command centers on the western border. The strike was carried out using combat drones and long-range missiles launched from the Mediterranean. Israel's Ministry of Defense called it a shadow operation, referring to an operation not officially confirmed, but with clearly felt consequences for the enemy. There was no live broadcasts, no journalists, just explosions, and the disappearance of signals at several key Iranian sites. However, Tehran has so far made no statements or shown signs of retaliation. On the contrary, internal propaganda portrays Israeli strikes as background explosions from a fake war movie. On the other hand, intelligence analysts believe Iran's response is not yet exhausted. Many consider the missile strike on the ministry as only the initial stage of a gradual escalation scenario. If Iran is silent, it doesn't mean it's over. They might be looking for a list of other Israeli ministries not yet reinforced with anti-M missile concrete, a senior defense analyst said during an internal discussion in the Israel Defense Forces. Meanwhile, the body of Foreign Minister Eli Bar-Lev was buried in a closed military ceremony. His family declined media coverage, citing the visual trauma caused by the condition of the body. Some foreign diplomats present appeared wary. Most wore personal ballistic helmets and bulletproof vests during the procession. The internal situation remains unstable. The Israeli government imposed restrictions on commercial flights abroad and mobilized 40,000 reservists in anticipation of a large-scale war. On social media, Israeli users began sharing lists of safe places, including old bunkers, cafe basements, and even underground public restrooms, which are claimed to have 4G signals but cannot be penetrated by missiles. The international community started to speak out. Some countries call for de-escalation, while Israel's close allies offer moral support without providing direct military assistance. Because apparently sympathy is free, but missiles are expensive. Now the Middle East is once again on the brink, and all parties know that one more missile could be the spark that ignites a major war that diplomacy cannot prevent. As explosions and airstrikes continue to dominate headlines, a new phase of the conflict has shifted to the dark corridors of intelligence and shadow diplomacy. Amid Tehran's official silence and the absence of strong statements from Tel Aviv, the world sees clear signs of a new Cold War forming. In recent days, cyber activity has surged dramatically. Several small Iranian cities experienced sudden power outages, followed by disruptions in internal communication networks. Unofficial reports suggest that Israel's elite cyber unit, Unit 8200, is knocking on the door of Iran's command system. Though no one admits it, digital footprints cannot be entirely hidden. If you think your social media account being hacked is bad, imagine what it's like when your nuclear reactor suddenly starts making noise, a former cyber analyst said during a closed discussion that leaked to the press. On the other hand, US and European intelligence began detecting suspicious maneuvers. It is reported that several cargo planes of Iran's Revolutionary Guard landed in Syria and Iraq with unusual cargo. There are suspicions that Iran is preparing to supply missiles to its regional proxies. Israel is not standing still either. Reports indicate that Mossad activated a network of field agents in Lebanon, Yemen, and even Turkey. One report suggests that mysterious diplomatic packages sent to Istanbul contain not documents, but micro-cameras and chemical tracking substances. The Turkish government has not yet commented on this information. Meanwhile, the UN issued only a standard statement calling for de-escalation in peaceful dialogue, but everyone knows the UN's voice amid missiles is no louder than a notification in a muted WhatsApp group. International diplomacy now resembles a YouTube API. Everything is available, but no one handles the back end, said a frustrated Western diplomat after 3 days of fruitless negotiations. This crisis has also raised concerns about nuclear weapons. Although no significant movements are observed at Iran's and Israel's nuclear facilities, satellite imagery shows heightened security and logistics around sensitive sites. The scary thing isn't the missiles already launched, but those yet to be launched. Now everyone can only hope the next button pressed isn't red and round, an analyst commented.